Things about trading Forex is that you don't actually know exactly which trade is going to be a crazy winner or just another loss.
What's up, everybody? We are currently live.
We'll take away the weekly.
Trade back down to orthodox. Evidence that price is going to be bullish.
Point sort of chasing the market. I was more than happy to stay flat.
Hello everyone.
What the kangaroo tell?
Always recommend trading on the 5 minute.
Some of these exotic pairs in pretty steady uptrend, making these higher highs and higher.
Mostly trend following.
The stimulus in a certain way.
All right. Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening to everybody tuning in. Welcome to another market analysis video. All right. So again, welcome to everybody tuning in. And today, with the markets closing, I'll go over a couple of pairs that I'm looking at going into next week. But what I'm going to do now is kind of give just a quick recap on the trade that I took this week, and kind of give you guys the breakdown to lay out a level of understanding as to how I trade and how you might potentially swing trade in the market. All right, so what I'm going to do now is shift over to Telegram and pull up this chart. And so here's an image of GBP odd. This is a trade that I took, I believe, on July 4th. So I noticed a steady downtrend off the 4-hour and the 1-hour. And then I also noticed that price was breaking a level of support. It came back to retest that level. So you can see this yellow line that I have denoted. You see that price kind of pushed back into that region. There's also an order block that kind of served as the sponsor for my execution, and it was a beautiful play out. So this is the play out after about 24 hours or so. You can see it was about a 100 pip trade, quite a bit of consolidation, but I kind of just stayed patient. I already knew the risk, and I was willing to take that on if it did spike back up. But fortunately, this trade played out beautifully. After that decent amount of consolidation, you can see it just spiked beautifully to the downside, and came right into that level of support that I was targeting for price to reach. So yeah, beautiful trade. This is actually the only trade that I took, but quality over quantity. And just to give you guys a quick recap as to what I took this week. All right. Okay. So we can get right into the charts. Ooh, okay. So looking at the chat now, I apologize, guys. So looking at the chat now, I see that my screen was still on trading view. All right. So what I'm going to do now is try and switch back to Telegram and show you guys the trade. Sorry about that. All right. Let's see if we can come back over here. All right. Share. Chrome. Share. All right. All right. Can you guys see my screen now? My Telegram screen. Let's see. Drop an A in the chat if you can see. Can't see it? Okay. Let's see, stop screen, share. Okay, how about now? We should be good now. Drop an A if you can see the Telegram screen now. All right, it looks like we're good to go. All right, perfect. All right, cool. So what I'll do now is pop up that image. All right, so this is GBP odd. There was a steady downtrend off the 4 hour and the 1 hour time frame. And so after identifying that, that sort of dictated the bias that I had in the market. And so you can see, with this yellow support line that I drawn here, we had a beautiful break of that support region. We came back to retest that area. I don't know if it's super visible right now, but there's also an order block that served as the sponsor for my execution in the market. Also coming down to some smaller time frames, I saw some bearish price action. So I went ahead and executed, and boom, beautiful trade. And so, like I was saying before, there was quite a bit of consolidation. You can see that price was just pinballing back and forth before it really took off. But I already knew the risk. That was something that I was willing to take, something that I kind of already pre-calculated into my stop loss. And so I was comfortable if it did end up going in the other direction, just a part of the game. But thankfully, it dropped to the downside. So beautiful play out, and came right into that target support region that I was anticipating. So beautiful trade. This was the only trade that I actually took this week, but I'm quality over quantity. All right, cool. So what I'm gonna do now is come back to the actual trading view. All right, and so let me know if this transition works. Okay, so we should be back in trading view. All right, I think we're in trading view. So I'll go ahead and give an overview of some of the trades that I'm looking at going into next week. We can go ahead and start with odd CHF. Coming over to the weekly time frame, you see a steady downtrend, right? Lower lows and lower highs. That dictates my bias. And so now we can drop down to a smaller time frame because we don't really want to execute off the weekly. It would take days on end for that to play out. So we come down to smaller time frames to identify more immediate opportunities in the market. Okay. So what I identified over here was a level of 4 hour support that odd CHF was able to dip into. And now I was just on standby and waiting to see how price would behave at that level. If we zoom in, you can currently see that we're bouncing off that region pretty well. But this is more so of a place in the market, a spot in the market where I'm on standby. I'm waiting for it to approach another significant reacts. So one level that stands out to me is this one right here, right? So we weren't able to break this level of support here. We did see that we were in a downtrend off the weekly time frame, so that is dictating my bias. But it would be interesting to see if going into next week we can come back and retrace into this level of support turned potentially resistance. All right, so just on the sidelines, waiting to see if price can approach that level. I'm looking for something like this, given that I do have a bearish bias. All right. So potential short position that might, be executed going into next week. All right, let's come over to Euro odd. All right, euro odd. Zoom out, get the bird's eye view of the market. You can see that we have been in a steady uptrend. So kind of the opposite of odd CHF, where we are making higher highs and higher lows. All right. You can see that I identified a level of resistance. Whoops. Let me switch over to the crosshair. So we've come back to a level of resistance. It first acted as support. You can see that we broke it, but now we've come back into that region. Given that we have been in a pretty strong uptrend off of the weekly, that's sort of dictating my bias, but I always want to come down to smaller time frames to identify immediate levels of support and resistance, and also get a better feel for how the market has been behaving in the most recent of times. All right. So you can see that yellow line that is acting as my resistance level. We have sort of a break and retest scenario here, right? So you can actually think of, support and resistance as zones rather than lines, but just as a general depiction here. If I come down to the 1 hour, you can see we're kind of fiddling around at this level of resistance turns support. So I would wait for more price action to develop to see if, hey, do we want to reject this level and continue going to the upside, or do we want to continue pushing past it and get some sort of bearish movement for the next, week or so? All right, so definitely a bullish bias, but still on the sidelines with this pair. Just want to see how it's going to react at the current level it's operating at. All right, so what I'm going to do now is switch over to an exotic pair that I personally like trading, which is Euro NOK. All right, so Euro NOK, similar to Euro AUD, we saw a steady uptrend off of the higher time frames, higher highs, higher lows. All right. If we zoom in on price, you can see I identified a level of resistance that we broke, and it seems like we're coming back to retest. Let me come down to the 4 hour. I think that's where the level will be a little bit more apparent. All right. So here you can see that we're approaching a key level of resistance turns support. So again, similar to Euro odd, going into next week, I'll want to see how this pair reacts at this level. Are we going to get some sort of signal like bullish engulfing, for example, that says, hey, we want to reject this level and continue moving to the upside? Now, another thing that I want to point out is the fact that we have this order block region a little bit below that level of resistance turn support that I identified. So what I'll do now is take my horizontal ray and show you guys what I'm looking at. All right. So this is a concept that I cover on my previous streams. I think of them as opportunities or events where institutions come into the market and make these impulsive moves because they have the most power to shift the market in one direction or the other. And oftentimes it serves as a map, a layout of where price might be headed next, right? They sometimes come back to those positions to grab the liquidity and continue pushing the market further along in a direction that they please. So even though we are approaching an immediate level of resistance, turn support off of the daily and the 4 hour time frame where it's a little bit more apparent, I definitely want to keep this in the back of my mind as a potential region as to where price could spike before it continues pushing along, right? So how do I determine that? I wait to see how price reacts at given levels. And that also gives me a sense as to, okay, what's going to happen? Are we getting a signal that, we're bearish, we're making, candlesticks that suggest we want to break past the level, or are we showing signs of respecting it? All right, so really just waiting to see, waiting for the market to really tell us what it wants to do next before we react. And that's sort of how I approach the market. All right. Let's come over to Euro USD. All right, so quite a bit of Euro pairs I'm taking a look at for next week. All right, so Euro USD has been in a steady downtrend off the weekly time frame. Here, it's clear that we have been making lower lows and lower highs. All right. We have this head and shoulders pattern, which, I do look at patterns. I kind of just use them as an extra piece of confluence after I've built up a story of why I want to enter the market. But especially on higher time frames, I definitely pay attention to them because these structures are very well established. They've taken weeks, months, even sometimes years on ends to form. So I think of them as structures that you can trust a little bit more if you're seeing them off the higher time frames like the weekly and the monthly. All right. So we have this head and shoulders structure forming, which I've identified here with the left shoulder head and then the right shoulder. And then I just depicted this trend line, which is serving as that neckline or that slanted piece of support. So for the past couple of days, you can see we've been respecting that trend line, that neckline fairly decently. One thing that sticks out to me is the fact that upon reaching the neckline, we created a bullish engulfing candlestick, which suggests that, okay, hey, maybe we're not ready yet to see some sort of break of that line just yet. But definitely a pair that I'm watching going into next week. I'll be very interested in seeing if it could dip back into the neckline or if it's going to continue pushing further into some region of higher resistance. So definitely something I'm watching going into next week, but no opportunities for execution that I see coming from a swing trading standpoint at this time. All right, let's come over to, let's see. I think I skipped over CAD CHF. I wanted to cover that one briefly. All right, CAD CHF. So steady downtrend off the weekly time frame, lower lows, lower highs. All right, and so the daily shows that we're respecting a level of resistance fairly well. We've come into this order block region and we're respecting that zone well too. So this is sort of some range trading that I personally see going on. If I just delete this here and lay out this level of support, I'd really like to see one of two scenarios happen. One where we push back to the upside and break the level of resistance above, or crack below this level of support that I've drawn and get some sort of continuation to the downside. Given that we were in a bearish market structure off the weekly time frame, this is sort of what's dictating my bias. So I'd like to see some sort of break and bounce scenario like that happen. All right. All right, let's come over to GBP CHF. GBP CHF. All right, weekly time frame, lower lows, lower highs. Clearly, we are in a downtrend off the higher time frames. That dictates my bias. Let's drop down in the time frame and see what exactly is happening. All right, so let me denote this as a level of resistance that we've kind of pushed into and respected. Also, what I have depicted here is a bearish flag, right? So impulse move, bearish flag, and what I would expect is a continuation to the downside, as this is one of those continuation patterns I look out for. It looks like we're kind of pushing back into the channel. So maybe this was some sort of minor fake out, and maybe we want to consolidate for a little longer before the market really makes up its mind as to where it wants to go next. So this is a pair. As a swing trader, I'm on the sidelines. I'm waiting for some clear break and bounce scenario, particularly out of this bearish flag. All right, let's take a look at USD NOK. This is another one of those exotic pairs that I like to trade. All right, so let me actually come to the weekly time frame. Weekly time frame shows a steady uptrend. Again, I just want to reiterate the fact that the higher time frames are so impactful because it really gives you a beautiful layout of what price has been doing and what it might be, where it might be headed next. And so it's always, even if you don't operate, immediately off the higher time frames, it's always good to look at them, so you can have in the back of your mind always, what's the overall dominant direction price is heading. And for me, again, that dictates the bias that I usually have in the market. So off the higher time frame, you can see that we're in a steady uptrend, making higher highs and higher lows. And so even though in the most recent of times we've been bearish, right? So just taking this piece of price, we have been in a bearish market structure. What I've seen is we are starting to crack below previous highs. Okay, so if I pull out my rectangle again, you can see even though at least in the most recent of times we have been bearish, we're starting to break above previous highs. And also, I'm also keeping in the back of my mind that the overall trend was to the upside off the weekly time frame. All right. So price is approaching this level of resistance turn support pretty well. We have this order block region that's also a potential zone price might spike into. So really interested in seeing the price action going into next week, how it may develop here, or if it does crack below this level, what kind of price action is going to develop here in that order block region. So two potential zones that I see price spiking into before a potential continuation to the upside. All right. Okay, let's see. Let's come over to US oil. All right, so US oil on the weekly time frame, it shows, some steady bearish market structure, even though we have been bullish in the most recent of times, right? So taking this surge to the upside, we're struggling to break past a key level of resistance off the weekly time frame, which I'll denote here with this rectangle. All right. So struggling to break past this zone. It's going to be very interesting to see how price continues to react in this level going into next week. I like this this bearish engulfing candlestick that formed here at this level of resistance. It shows that we are showing signs of rejection and respecting that zone. But I think I just need more price action to develop to see or to kind of determine my bias in the market. All right, so those were the majority of pairs that I was looking at going into next week. What I'll do now is if anybody has any pairs that they're looking at, definitely drop them in the chat and we can go ahead and take a look at those together. If anybody has any pairs they want to see covered on this show. All right. Let's come over to GBP USD. All right, GBP USD, steady downtrend. With this resistance level here that you see drawn here, you can see that price came into that zone. We respected it very well. And if I come to the daily, we're also respecting this level of support as well. So of those major levels of resistance and support off the daily time frame, I'd really like to see some sort of break of either one before I kind of determine what opportunity I might want to take in the market next. All right, let's take a look at GBP JPY. All right, GBP JPY off the higher time frames looks very similar to GBP USD in that we have been in a steady downtrend, just the dominant trend off the higher time frames. But you know, in the most recent of times, we've been pushing towards levels of resistance and now waiting to see how price might react, whether it wants to push above those levels or continue moving to the downside. What stands out to me, again, I really like identifying these textbook patterns off the higher time frames. So left shoulder, head, and that right shoulder to complete the head and shoulders. All right. So it serves as a slight confluence, slight implication as to what price might be doing next. Let's drop down to the daily. Let's actually come to the 4 hour. I think some more price action will reveal itself. All right. So again, after respecting that level of resistance up top, price has been bullish in the most recent of times, but I'm just waiting to see if we can break some sort of major daily or 4 hour resistance or support. So it's kind of like in that region where I'm standing on the sidelines waiting to see what's going to happen with some of these major levels. Pretty similar to GBP USD. All right, let's take a look at USD CAD, and I think we'll go ahead and wrap this session up. All right, USD CAD, weekly time frame. All right. So USD CAD, this level of support, every time we've bounced into this zone, the past 3 to 4 times we've respected it pretty well, and it served as the launch pad for a bullish movement back to the upside. So once we break that level, that's definitely something I would consider. It might be a nice implication that further bearish movement might commence. But at least in the most recent of times, you do see this downtrend up until the point where we reach that major level of support. We're respecting it pretty well. And if I come to the 4 hour, let me clean this up a little bit. If I come to the 4 hour, we have some break and retest scenarios playing out. One that stands out to me is this one here. For me to feel comfortable bullish in this market, I would like to see a break above this previous high. And that would give me a little bit more confirmation as to where price might be headed next. It might imply that, upon bouncing off that weekly level of support, we want to continue pushing up to the upside as we did the previous 3 times off the weekly time frame, right? So this is the level every time we come into, we bounce and get some sort of decent bullish movement to the upside. All right, so still on the sideline, just going to wait and see how once it comes to those levels of interest, how it reacts. All right, I'll cover one more pair. CHF JPY is what I see in the chat, and then we will wrap this session up. All right, CHF JPY. So CHF JPY, it's a little funky, but it's showing some bullish market structure, higher highs and higher lows. And in the most recent of times, if we just take this piece of price, let me get over my brush. You can see we've been bullish. And not only that, we've recently broke a key level of resistance and come back to retest that zone, which is what I'm depicting with this yellow line over here. If we come to the daily, you can see that we're respecting this price. Kind of looks like a double bottom off the daily time frame. You can see those nice wick rejections as well, showing that we're respecting that zone. And we also have this bullish engulfing candlestick as an extra signal, showing that we're respecting and rejecting this level. So given that I want to kind of go with the flow of price, I'm anticipating going into next week a move to the upside here. All right. So definitely a trade I'll look out for going into next week. I would love to see if we can dip back into this zone here, maybe get some sort of triple bottom, and then also line up with that order block region before we kind of make our push to the upside. But definitely a bullish bias on CHF JPY. All right, beautiful, but at the retesting point. Yeah, I agree. That's sort of where my bias lies as well from a swing trading standpoint. All right, so with that, thank you guys for tuning in, and I will check back with you guys next week. Peace.
Hey guys, thanks for watching today's show. I hope you enjoyed it. And before you go, make sure to check out our guest today and also subscribe to the A1 Trading YouTube channel if you have not already. Risk Calculator is a risk management tool built specifically for MetaTrader 4 and MetaTrader 5 to help you position size properly. Their easy to use software will allow you to enter and exit positions with lot sizes that are calculated for you, suited to your risk management settings that you allow for the tool. This is a big thing because a lot of us struggle with over leveraging or accidentally taking a position size too big, and Risk Calculator is there to help. Like I said, with the click of a few buttons, you're able to set your trade and the lot size will automatically be calculated for you so that it suits your risk management plan. In addition to actually setting your trades with the proper lot size, it also allows you to manage your trades as they're going along. Things like trailing stops, moving stops to break even, or even partial take profits are all tools or features available with the Risk Calculator functions that are available on MetaTrader 4 and MetaTrader 5. If you're interested in checking out Risk Calculator, there's a link down below in the description, and if you use that link, it does help to support what we do here on the channel, which is provide free trading content, again, thanks to the help of our sponsors. So thanks so much for watching today. Again, make sure to subscribe to us here on YouTube if you haven't already, and we'll see you back in the next one.